To the Land and Property Inclusivity track at Charcha 2020. We'll introduce this panel. Shreya, if you could kick us off.
Sure. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Shreya Dev. I'm from Multimedia Network India. We are an investment firm focused on social impact. And one of the things that we firmly believe is how critical land is actually for social impact, for driving economic recovery, for rural relief, for jobs, especially given the turmoil that we're going through in today's world. And we are very excited by the esteemed panel of guests who are joining us today. Very excited to have them with us. Dr. Shekhar Shah, he is the Director General of NCAER, the National Council for Applied Economic Research. It's one of the oldest and largest think tanks in India. And Dr. Shah has been at the forefront of really thinking through how land and land policy is going to be very critical in today's environment. So he's going to help us through this session today. He's going to steer the conversation. So I'm going to hand over to you, Dr. Shah.
Thank you, Shreya. And it's a pleasure to be here and with a very distinguished panel who is going to do most of the talking. I'm simply going to be the guidepost here. The session itself is, I think, at the heart of the rural recovery that India needs badly. And I hope that during the course of this discussion with the panel, which I'll introduce in a second, we'll be able to get to some of the issues around the ability to use land and the ownership and the leasing and the marketing of land in ways in which we can actually ensure that it plays a serious part in social protection and safety nets and welfare and relief in rural India. With me is Dr. K.P. Krishnan, presently chairman of the committee of the Government of India that's dealing with cross-border bankruptcies, but until recently the secretary in the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Prior to that, he has held a significant number of senior positions, including as the secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development in charge of the Department of Land Resources. So he brings eminent experience to the panel today. He's had a distinguished career as well in the Ministry of Finance, and since a lot of the issues that we hope to talk about today relate to credit and to finance and to credit guarantees, I'm sure that this will be extremely valuable for us to hear from him. Also with me is Mr. A.P. Nagar, who is Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Panchayati Raj, and he is the key person in the Government of India who has just put out the new scheme, the Samvitva scheme, which is designed to help those who are in homesteads using modern technology to be able to map the areas that they are living in, and therefore enable tenurial security. And I'm very keenly looking forward to hearing about the new scheme and how it will be rolled out. And then finally, we have with us S.Chockalingam, also in this case from the IAS Maharashtra cadre. He has served in many capacities in Maharashtra in his career as a civil servant, as the Land Settlement Commissioner. He has spearheaded the mapping of rural settlements in Maharashtra using drone technology. So very eminently suited to looking at the issues. He's currently a member also of the GOI's Committee on Conclusive Titling. So the Swamitwa scheme is something that I'm sure he will also have something to say about from the state perspective. So this is really a very distinguished panel. In our discussion, we earlier decided that we would focus on three elements of how land transactions and how the ownership of land, the leasing of land, the use of land can become an important fulcrum in the ability to get relief and credit and finance to rural residents. In that, we decided that we would focus on practicality. This isn't about rocket science. This isn't about some fancy research. This is about creating schemes that can actually work on the ground. Secondly, we decided we would focus on capacity within government, local government, panchayats, and of course partnerships with the private sector. And finally, timeliness. This isn't something that we can afford to do in the next 2 years or 3 years. This is really here and now, what can be done to be able to utilize land as a fulcrum for support in rural India. This also resonates, this session today resonates with something that happened earlier in April, on the 6th of April, when the network that the Omidyar network has put together of research institutions working on land discussed this very issue of how indeed land can become a important platform for being able to engineer and support a rural recovery. So there is a fair degree of research in the background that I hope will also be able to inform this topic. With that, let me turn to Dr. K.P. Krishnan, and then I'll request Srinagar to come in, and then giving us the view from the state, Mr. Chockalingam. I also see that Pranab Chaudhary is with us. I'm very glad that he is, and I'm sure that we'll be able to bring him into the conversation later on. I'll introduce him at that point. So, Dr. Krishnan, please. About 7 to 10 minutes, I guess.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Shreya and Rashi for putting this conversation together, and my greetings to my co-panelists, Alok Nagar and Mr. Chockalingam. As Dr. Shah said, the importance of the topic is not something which needs to be driven home, especially to an audience like this. But I think to set the context, let me start with the RBI Indian Household Finance Report of 2017, which brings out an important, stark fact, which is that if in most developed countries, close to not more than 40% of household wealth is held in the form of land and real estate, India is a completely sort of different ball game. In India, 77% of household wealth is held in the form of land and real estate. And it's significantly higher than any comparable country. Now, besides its importance for shelter, clearly this piece of statistic and this number is important for the ability of Indian households to monetize its value, because this historically, the ability to monetize the value of land has played a significant role in the economic growth and development in all countries, and history is full of these examples. Now, for this to happen, we need a reasonably functional, liquid market for land, and therefore, secure tenure and property rights are the absolute bedrock of this activity. Even the shelter part, people will begin to invest more in their own dwellings in case they know for sure about where they are vis-a-vis the property in terms of their property rights. And there is again enough evidence in India and elsewhere to show that when I'm unsure about my own title, I underinvest in my property, and I therefore don't live as well as I potentially could. Likewise, it has a whole bunch of other sort of importance. For instance, the reduction in the risk in lending is one immediate consequence of secure tenure and property rights. Now, the absence of this secure tenure and property rights leads to a whole bunch of distortions. Again, economic literature describes this in great detail. All of that need not sort of hold us back, given our focus, given the focus of our discussion today, I just want to highlight one or two micro distortions of this inadequate sort of security of tenure and property rights. A, it is clearly, and there is enough data in India to show that this is leading to suboptimal lending practices in the form of what is called very low loan to value ratios. My property is worth rupees X. I end up getting a very small percentage of X as loan, essentially because of inadequate security of tenure and property rights relating to that property. Two, the other sort of well-known part and very well documented by agencies like Daksh in Bangalore, close to 66 to 70% of civil cases in India are property and land related. So in terms of the importance of getting this right, and all the numbers that I'm giving you, these are all well documented, publicly available, and reasonably sort of verified numbers. So I think there is a good case for working on this issue. And the standard sort of framework that one uses in the context of property, when we talk about security of tenure and property rights, is what is called the 4P framework: the parcel, the purpose, the person, and the price. I will repeat: the parcel of land, the purpose as in land use, the person as in the owner, and the price of the land. And most of the distortions that we see in the market relate to the parcel. And what do I mean by this? Lack of a single comprehensive view of parcel level information, including physical contours, including the structures on land, become the critical barrier in building up a good quality sort of security of tenure and property rights. Now, Government of India, as a sort of a relatively less operational player, given that this is a concurrent list subject, has been playing a supportive role, and there is a long history to our land programs, most recently culminating in the program called DILRMP, which is the Digital India Land Records Modernization Program, focused on this, essentially giving money to state governments to focus on measurement of land and updating of property records, but typically restricted to revenue lands. That is, land which is covered by respective land revenue codes of states. Whereas what we are talking about today is the residential or habited land, whether it's rural or urban. So the non-DILRMP land would be the rural homestead land, or what in Karnataka, for instance, we call the Gaon Thana, and each state has its variation of this, the habited part of the village. And in a sense, this is actually the more important part, because from a residential life security as well as high value in terms of mortgage, it is typically this land. And hence, we've had in the past programs like the Urban Property Ownership Record Initiative of Karnataka, which was a good one, not backed by statute, but an excellent, well-executed, good program, which is sort of currently, I think the scale needs to be pushed up. Then comes the, I think the long overdue Swamitwa scheme. And I want to personally take this opportunity to sort of thank Alok, his secretary Sunil, and the hierarchy in Department of Ministry of Panchayati Raj for this, because this was, I think, a desperately needed scheme. I'm glad they've introduced Swamitwa. I've had occasion to sort of take a quick look at it. But I think in terms of the missing part of Land Records of India, this is an important first step. We need to do likewise for urban property. And the importance of this in the context of what Dr. Shah was saying, and I'll conclude with this statement, Dr. Shah, in the post-COVID world, given what we heard the finance minister saying day before, the importance of easing the financing constraint of MSME, land has historically, and residential buildings and land have actually played a very significant role in easing the financing constraints of MSME all over the world. Typically, the big collateral that small players bring when they go to finance business is land and residential buildings. So what Alok and his secretary have launched and what the Panchayats of India will hopefully complete successfully will be a very important part, I think, of land security generally and some of the immediate issues that we are likely to be battling post-COVID-19. I'll stop here. Happy to come back in case there are any questions or any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Krishnan. I think that's a wonderful roundup of the background to doing this, as well as the criticality of improving the market for land, in a sense, improving the ease of doing land business, but doing it safely, securely, keeping the interests of the small landholder very much at heart. Is, I think, the right set of issues. I'd like to now invite Alok. As I said earlier, and I fully join Dr. Krishnan in complimenting you, Alok, and Secretary Ministry of Panchayati Raj on the scheme, which is both timely and extremely pertinent to the situation that we face. I forgot to mention that Alok is a member of the Indian Forest Service, so has deep knowledge and experience of rural. He's part of the Himachal Pradesh service, and so really is extremely well placed to tell us about the Samvitva scheme. Alok? Alok, you need to unmute yourself, please.
Thank you very much, sir, for a great start. You've set the whole thing in context, and that aspect of it, the important role that this thing is fulfilling, is something that S.Chockalingam can carry on with, because it is essentially based on what we saw in Maharashtra. That was the trigger that brought about this whole scheme. The aspect that I would like to touch on mainly, sir, is that of empowering the panchayats. The Ministry of Panchayati Raj, the most important mandate is to empower panchayats through funds, functionaries, through advocacy, to help them really realize the vision that has been set for them in the constitutional amendment. So there is the 11th schedule, 29 subjects are mapped onto them. There has to be a Gram Panchayat development plan and all these things. And so, quoting from the economic survey of 2017-18, there is a need to reconcile fiscal federalism and accountability. So on the one hand, you want the panchayats to be these beautifully functioning independent entities. At the village level, you expect them to keep the, in the current COVID times, you expect them to keep the ingressors out. You need them to organize isolation centers and keep people safe. And then when it comes to the issue of revenues with panchayats, the position from state to state is very variable. The main source of funding continues to be the Finance Commission, the 14th Finance Commission really. The 15th has just come in this year. And because the allocations vary according to the population of a Gram Panchayat, so you have tremendous variability. For instance, for a small size GP, a GP might be getting only about 2.5 lakh rupees in a year from the Finance Commission, whereas at the other end of the spectrum, you have big Gram Panchayats in other parts of the country which get up to 1 crore of. So there is a need to have your own sources of revenue, sir. So that is the context, what I saw in Maharashtra, own sources of revenue, the condition across the country is not very good. There are some leading lights, for instance, states such as Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Haryana, they average in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 lakh rupees of revenue. A main part of that comes from the property tax that is imposed, that is delegated to the panchayats through the State Panchayati Raj Act, and that enables these people to levy a tax. It is a good tax in the sense that the realization is quick and the utilization of this money is so transparent. And so you have a scenario that you give your money and you find that your street light is fixed, your drains are clean, your roads are good, your neighborhoods are clean, and so on and so forth. So it is in this context that one must also look at Swamitva. So Swamitva, the main mandate is that of serving the Abadi lands, which is the lands which are known as Lal Dora lands. And Lal Dora means that the rules and laws outside that are not applicable. So there is no as such enforceable record of the property once owned there. You spoke about Himachal Pradesh. So I've been to the villages in Himachal Pradesh with my father-in-law. He's got a house there. Nobody uses that. Nobody lives there. Each time he's got to go there, he's got to incur an expense. He has nothing to prove that that thing is his, so he can't sell it off. The whole issue of parcel and land use that Sir brought up. So that gets taken care of. The property value would rise. The panchayats would have a basis for assessment of property tax and levy that and use it for the improvement of the panchayats. I mean, why can't panchayats have decent planning? So for a panchayat to have a good plan, you need to know that the shops are going to be here, the business areas are going to be there, there's going to be an institutional area, there is going to be a recreational area. For them to do that, they must have a basis. They need to know that what kind of, they need, for a plan, you need to vacate maybe some land from a certain part of that GP, take those houses elsewhere, build something else here. So for you to be able to do that, there has to be a firm basis for doing that. I believe that having property parcels clearly delineated and providing people with the titles is going to help us achieve that. Maybe in the medium term and long term, but in the short term, at least the basis of that would have been clearly defined. Panchayats, I've told you the figures on the devolution of the Finance Commission. They receive 95% of their revenues from devolved funds. For a state like Uttar Pradesh, that has got nearly 59,000 Gram Panchayats, they have no other source of fund. There is no property tax. There is little or nothing from the State Finance Commission. There is no own sources of revenue. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have GPs, which are 40,000 strong. They have more money coming to them. For instance, in Kerala, they have more money coming to them from the State Finance Commission than the Central Finance Commission. And so you can really talk about panchayats being able to deliver the services that you want to be entrusted to them. So that is another important aspect. And the other aspect, like Sir had said in the beginning, that it will help us monetize the economy. People would have a basis for establishing, for giving their papers for mortgage, for realizing loans, and for carrying out little works. If you need to have a separate room and you wait from year to year, you have some money from the harvest this year, you buy bricks, you set it up, you wait for next year until you get something more, then you get cement and you set it up. And yeah, so this is what it's going to help us with. The rural, there's very little taxation happening there. Again, I get this from some report that the urban local bodies, the comparison is with them, they generate 45% of their own sources of revenue per capita. Their revenue collected by ULBs is 3% of the urban per capita income. In rural local bodies, it is 0.1%. So taxation, of course, is a sensitive matter, and when it is announced, people walk away from such a situation. And but it's also a fact from what I saw in Maharashtra, which I hope Chockalingam talks about a little more, that you saw people come forward. You had Gram Panchayats actively participate in that. These people were collaborating with each other in settling differences. The tuna lines were laid out without much fuss. Only in 1% of the cases were there disputes that had to be escalated into court cases and all that. Otherwise, it was win-win. The people cooperated. They stayed there. They came from several kilometers away, a day away, just for this exercise, and they could achieve it so well. From what I have seen in Haryana, the chief minister makes a point of distributing the title deeds. So it's something that was long overdue, and it'll be great if we can do the thing in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok, for that very nice introduction to the scheme. And let's hear from S.Chockalingam about Maharashtra and the way in which this has evolved there, and of course the fact that Maharashtra is very much in the forefront of drone technology and other cadastral ways of mapping this sector. Chockalingam.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the opportunity given to us to explain the concept, and thanks to Nagar sir to making it a national program, which is badly needed at this point of time. So in the survey, what we do is that we end up giving two things to people. One is a spatial record in the form of a map. Another one is a textual record in the form of a holdership record. Technically, we call that all lands belong to government. So we give them the right of holdership. And Gram Panchayat get two advantages. One, they get better tax register, and they get very accurate maps with not only horizontal accuracy, but also vertical accuracy, which is very important when we are planning a drainage or a watershed management. So far, whatever is imagined, now every Gram Panchayat can plan even in the Z vertical. So this is the most important thing which we are getting. We are getting 20 centimeter vertical accuracy. Our horizontal accuracy is whatever is best possible, which is 5 centimeter at the pixel level and 12.5 centimeter at the spatial level. Now, what are the advantages? One, very good, valid property record to everyone who is holding the land for the past even 200, 300 years, but they don't have any records. When the Britishers surveyed, the main focus was on collecting revenue. So whatever was a productive land has been surveyed by and large, and these lands, which are supposed to be wastelands, some states, the name itself shows that it is a useless land. Porambok, they call it in Tamil Nadu and some other places. So it is a wasteland, it was not surveyed. So at the time, the government felt that let the people occupy, I am not bothered. So it is not surveyed. But now the position is upside down. The highly valuable land is that homestead land. If you compare the agriculture land to non-agriculture land, the homestead land is very costly. So much so that agriculture land is getting converted to non-agriculture land, and even by paying some fees to the government, some amount to the government. Right. Now, once we give these property rights, what are the benefits the people will get? One, as Krishnan sir very clearly explained, that person may be having money, but he's really worried about putting a lot of money to construct a house, because he's not very sure about that whether that will be treated as an encroachment and brought down tomorrow. So that construction can start. Now he's very sure about his property, and whatever he is constructing may be passed on to whomsoever he is willing to do. Point number two is that there are many government housing schemes, as actually Government of India has a very ambitious housing for all scheme, But many a time, this is not constructed because ownership documents are not there for the people. So people end up, maybe even some places, government is favorable, it was constructed, but ownership rights are not given. They are just given that your house is constructed, you are given this right to live in this house, but not the land ownership. Now, giving this ownership give a great push that yes, the jopdi they are having, the small kacha house they are having can be converted into permanent house under government scheme. Third thing is that the credit. Like any urban, most of the purchase in urban areas through credits, bank credits. Now, this can happen even for house construction, not only for house construction, but also for starting any other industry or any other business. So in De Soto's words, the property will get another life. Not only it will be utilized, but it will also be given another life of producing capital. So we will get capital. The people will get capital. Right. Now, what are the advantages of this drone survey which we are taking up? It's not technically, but from the surveyor's perspective. Because they are not surveyed, there is an advantage, as we know, as either a late starter advantage or a clean slate advantage. When we are going with a clean slate survey or a fresh survey, the principle followed is what is called phantom of possession. Whoever is in possession will get converted into holder. So this treats rich and poor equally. Normally we see that whenever we give ownerships, people who are occupying for 100 years, 200 years, they get ownership. Even today, even in government of Maharashtra Gram Panchayat records, people who are having lands in around 1970s when the Gram Panchayat started recording, they are kept as owners and the rest are treated as encroachers. So time and again, government has to tell that this has to be regularized. Now, when a fresh survey takes place, everyone is a holder or everyone is an encroacher. The surveyor goes, he sees how much it is, how much area is occupied. The principle followed is adverse possession under the Limitation Act, whether he is there for 30 years. In some cases, this 30 years has been reduced. For example, just a year earlier, government of Maharashtra reduced this time that whoever is occupying land till 2011 can be conferred holdership. So whoever is having holdership up to 2011 occupied, the occupier will become a holder. So this is one of the greatest equalization thing, so that people are, even the poor people get record of rights. Now, as far as acceptance is concerned, as Mr. Nagar pointed out, people welcome these people in a procession because they are holding this land for even centuries, but there is no record worth the name. The existing record is only the taxation record, which simply says that this is 25 feet into 10 feet into 23 feet. Where it is, whether it is correctly measured or not, no one knows. And it is a possessor's record. It is only for taxation purpose. It cannot be used as a holdership record. Now, this everything is going to change because we are converting a holdership, so possession to holdership. The disputes are almost nil. It is mainly maybe around 1%, and Maharashtra has a robust mechanism in the form of city survey rules to resolve that. There is a proper quasi-judicial system where there is a taluka level officer who hear the first appeals, there is a district level officer who hear the second appeals. They are properly decided. But to be frank, 99% of the cases it gets settled because people know that instead of fighting for 1 feet here and there, let both of us get rights whatever is available, because compared to the small boundary dispute of 1 feet, 2 feet, he is going to get maybe 1,000 square feet of the land in their name. As long as the dispute is there, it may not be confirmed. So this is one of the greatest advantages. Now, the greatest thing about this is that this gives power to the people. So far, the surveyor goes with a machine or any surveying unit, he measures and declares Mr. Nagar owns this much. No. Here, we give chuna powder, the limestone powder to the people, ask them to mark their boundaries on their own. We are worried only about public property, like if someone is encroaching on the road. Otherwise, we give it the right to them because the neighbor is there to take care if he is going to claim more. And we are doing it publicly, not between one surveyor and one person. So if someone is encroaching on public land unnecessarily, people come and tell us confidentially or publicly, sir, this person wants this much only, but he is taking more. So this transparency puts in lot of protection of public land, and the disputes are also resolved easily. Now, the power to the people is not only now, it will go to the people in future also. How? Today, whatever we are having, our GPS, which we are having the mobile and systems, are capable of only 2-meter accuracy, 1-meter accuracy. Time will not be far that it will be with even centimeter accuracy. So tomorrow, the maps we are going to give is with the lat long. So tomorrow, if there is a dispute, there is no need for people to come to a surveyor. They can take their mobile, they can download my map and stand. Both of them can stand and decide what is the correct boundary. So this is almost giving this power to the people. Even in between, till this technology comes in, there can be surveyors who can be trained under skills mission, where the local people can resolve these disputes. These are the major advantages. There are 1 or 2 issues which the state governments have to take care. One is legal regime has to be established. There are certain states where this legal regime is not there. That is conforming the possessors to holders. They have to establish. We are working with the Government of India, Ministry of Panchayat Raj to give a model thing for that. Second is financial. Survey is always revenue neutral and expenditure incurred is always collected from the people. The expenditure we expect per household is from 300 rupees to 500 rupees. That is max. So people they are going to get ownership rights. The property is worth of 2 lakh, 3 lakh, 5 lakh, 10 lakhs, but they have to pay only 300. We found that everyone comes in queue and pay. The moment we are able to give within 3 months, 4 months, if it drags for 5 years, no one pays because then the boundaries change and the possessors change. People stand in queue and pay, and our money gets collected maximum within 15 days. So the financing pattern is very clear. Only thing is that we need seed money. Around 1/3 of the total expenditure for the state needs to be given as a seed money. Second thing is manpower. States like Maharashtra have good survey manpower. In some places, survey department needs to be strengthened. I will only show one slide if it can be shared, how this is very transparent. I will just request Shah sir to tell whether the screen is visible.
Yes, I believe we will be able to see.
Is it visible, sir?
Yes.
So this is how the holderships are given. Even in the best of GPS survey and ETS survey, even educated people cannot understand whether the line drawn on a map covers their household or not. Here, everyone, illiterate, they can find out whether the line encompasses their land or not. So this is the greatest transparency, no disputes, no private discussion with anyone, and this can be taken to any court, any authority. People will see with their own eyes and confirm what is done. This is the biggest advantage of the drone model compared to other modern technologies. I stop here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chockalingam. And if we can return your screen back, if you can turn off your screen sharing.
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you very much. So this is clearly a scheme, the Swamitwa scheme, that is going to be an important input, and we implore upon the Ministry of Panchayat Raj and of course all the states that have to collaborate with you to get this going quickly as possible, because that is what will help clearly in the short and medium term to be able to get to the kind of financing that we are looking for. We are doing reasonably well on time. We still have about 20 minutes more before we have to end. I do see Mr. Pranab Chaudhary on our panel, and I'd like to ask him if you'd like to say a few words for a minute or two. Chockalingam and he have just written a blog on can India's rural property card be an opportunity to expedite post-COVID rural revival. So Pranab, if you want to say just a minute or two, we don't have that much time, but I can't not have you say something since you're on our panel and would love to hear from you. Pranab? And if you can turn your camera on.
Thank you, Professor Shah. Yeah. I'm sitting in my home.
So are we all.
That's okay. It's okay. So thank you very much, Shana, for providing this opportunity. This is quite esteemed panel. So I would not like to repeat the strengths and the processes that have already been highlighted. I would just like to add something which I think, perspective of researcher and civil society, that can add further value to the Swamitwa scheme. A couple of things. One is that we must also clear that Swamitwa is not only applicable to the states. Like in India, we have two kinds of states. The states where the village land is not surveyed so far, primarily Bombay Presidency, Madras Presidency and Punjab area. But there are other states also like Bihar, Bengal, Odisha, where the village areas have been surveyed. So they are already part of DLRMP, and Swamitwa is trying to update both. So it is clean slate as well as somewhere the land record is there. So both the things will be covered under Swamitwa. Coming to the second step, one thing we find that while there is a lot of discussion going on around gender mainstreaming, and we are arguing about adding gender column to DLRMP, Swamitwa has not yet clearly addressed that. So this is something we have also argued in our paper, that adding a gender column and adding all the name of the family members will be very useful tool to go ahead. That is number one. Number two, which has been already highlighted by Professor S.Chockalingam, is that we will be requiring a lot of survey if you do it in 4 years. And fortunately, many survey acts and rules which came up during 2010 after in many states like Bihar and Odisha and Karnataka. So you have provision of licensed surveyor or private surveyor. 1 million surveyor getting trained. This is a very good important thing in the context of post-COVID, because a lot of people are coming back. So if you can use skill mission to train these people about at least 1 to 2 surveyor per village, so they will create a big survey force. And you must realize that Swamitwa is not going to one time. The records has to be updated further. So if you have somebody in the village, so they can update it continuously. And as Mr. Chockalingam told, it will be revenue need, so people can pay for that. The third thing is that when panchayat is being empowered, we also know that panchayat needs to be also capacitated a lot. So we have seen the panchayat has that capability in terms of MGNREs and other kind of things. But around survey, this is very important, because this is very important thing in the way we are expanding the land administration to include panchayat. So this is a very important thing. So panchayat needs to be also adequately trained in that aspect so that they can take it forward. Another, just one thing I would like to add.
Pranab, I want you to wind up because we need more time just to answer a few questions, and so why don't we stop here and then come back to you if we can. So I have a number of questions which the panel can also see. Let's perhaps to ensure that we are able to respond to the more than 75, 80 participants who are already on the panel, on the webinar. Dr. Krishnan, would you like to take the first question about how panchayats can be leveraged for community participation in surveys for mapping to reduce future conflict? From my understanding, the incentive compatible nature of the scheme itself will take care of it, but perhaps you might, or Alok might want to say a few words about that question.
Yeah, I think Alok will perhaps be the better person to answer, but let me do one quick response. And before I do that, since Pranab explicitly sort of clarified to us that he's speaking from home, I must compliment him on his very nice coastal Orissa home. The envy of all of us who are sitting inside small rooms and wondering what a lovely background Pranab has. But anyway,
this is his own private beach, right, Pranab?
Pranab must offer to hold the next land conference in that lovely background, so that we can all come and participate in the coastal Orissa beauty. But on a more serious note, I think Pranab partly sort of referred to this question, which has come from somebody called Romit. I think the scheme Swamitwa hugely, remember the point that Alok made, there is a whole bunch of empowerment of panchayats that is being done. This is a part of that. For us, this is the big thing that we are talking about, but this is a part of a much larger panchayat empowerment activity that the Ministry of Panchayati Raj has sort of relaunched. And I mentioned to you briefly this morning, one of the important things that Alok's boss Sunil is trying to do is to actually involve panchayats in the national skill development mission. Independently of this activity, let's take village sanitation, let's take Swachh Bharat. There are so many things that are going on at present where you require competent, skilled manpower in the panchayats, and plus at a time when you are trying to create income and job opportunities in local areas, clearly these are among the activities where we need to do, and I think Pranav referred to it. As far as sort of greater leveraging of community participation, I think honestly the correct person to answer this is Alok, because they do this in every scheme of theirs. So I'll let him answer this.
Thank you very much, sir. Addressing some of the concerns that Pranav has raised, why only so many states, and there are several other states who do not have any legacy data on this. So there is a thing called CORS, Continuous Operating Reference System. So the Survey of India installs these roughly at 40 to 50 kilometers. They are some sort of a mobile towers, but their essential function is that they help you pinpoint that location. So if you are looking to locate yourself in a certain place and you have these CORS stations, chances are that you will locate yourself very accurately within sub-meter kind of thing. So we had an existing system of CORS already in the country, and that runs along the central kind of a backbone. So we already have that in Uttar Pradesh, in Madhya Pradesh, in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, and which is why the states that we've chosen to work in initially are these. Besides that, we've also chosen to install CORS in Punjab and Rajasthan, so that when we come back to this, I mean, when we really pick the scheme up from next year, we can hit the ground running. And then there was the issue of gender sensitivity that was raised. So this is a state subject, so there are limits to what we can do. But in Indra Awas Yojana, I think 60% of the beneficiaries, the first beneficiary is the lady member of the house. So we are looking to have a same kind of a model. Of course, it will have to be done at the level of the state. But in the preliminary discussions, we would be looking for the states to do that also in respect of the property parcels that are delineated inside the Abadi area. About the dearth of survey skills. So this whole thing is being done by a Survey of India. To begin with, they would be deploying some 200 teams simultaneously. So if there are several districts in a state, then there will be teams all over the place. The resources for that have already been identified. The drones have been bought and all that. And there was a point mentioned in the things that I was supposed to cover about technology. So per village, the large scale mapping cost that we estimate is of the order of 4,500 to 5,000 rupees per village. And comparing it to the total station or the differential GPS survey, this is about 1/10. And in 1/10, you are going to get 1:500 meter scale maps, which is extremely good. So it is a very good value for the money that is being invested. The updating frequency was also spoken about. This is again something that has been left to the states. The strong suggestion is that they do it at the end of every 5 years. The advantage of having the CORS network over the entire country is that when you're looking to update, It is not like you have to fly these drones over the place again. You can just get hold of a rover and you could go from location to location where there have been changes. And based on that, your soft maps are going to be updated and saved in your servers. About the practicality, how confident we are of finishing this. We've had the Honorable Prime Minister launch this on National Panchayati Raj Day. And there have been, in the initial meetings that we've had, the states have come and said that, why don't you have more villages? I mean, for Haryana and Uttarakhand, there are only 5,000 villages that we had kept in the first year. So people are really telling us that we need to have more. And we need to cover our entire state. Punjab has said that, why are you just making CORS stations in our state in the current year? Why don't you also go ahead with the rest of the program? So looking at the initial enthusiasm, we are very confident that we'll be able to get what we want to. And if there's something that I've missed, I would like.
No, this is great. We are also running out of time.
Sorry.
We'll take. No, I think this was very important what you just said. What I'll do is, given that we only have a few more minutes, I'll turn to Chockalingam and ask him, from a state perspective, what are going to be the 2 or 3 key hurdles that we must cross immediately, which of course Alok and Sunil, Secretary MOPR, can help clear from your state perspective. I know Maharashtra already is in the forefront of this, but from other states' perspective, what are the 2 or 3 key things that we really must quickly address in order to get to that timeliness thing that I mentioned?
There are basically 3 things which the states have to take care of, or the center and state put together has to take care of. One is the financing, that which should be around 30% of the total expenditure. For example, Maharashtra expenditure is around 300 plus crores. So at least 100 crores should be available at the front end as a seed money, so that as soon as the property cards are distributed, we will get the money back. But initially we need money, so every state should be very clearly told upfront about the need for money, either to be put by them or some other sources, or it can come from some other sources like NABARD. That is point number 1. Point number 2, certain states which were part of Bombay province are having a legal regime which recognizes these sort of possession to legal holdership conversion. Some states are not having, so it is not only law, it has to be a rules, regulations, detailed instructions. So this has to be done. This is the second thing. Third thing is the trained manpower. As we know, nowadays the survey technologies and other things have gone ahead, but we in government generally do very small surveys. We have forgotten large scale surveys. So we need to have enough manpower to do this, the large scale surveys. For example, 40,000 villages in Maharashtra, 1.25 crore property cards and maps to be issued. A huge order. Thanks to drone, we are going to issue faster, but the image taking and feature extraction is very small part. Going to the village, inquiring, resolving disputes, and issuing property card is the biggest one. This needs to be done. With your permission, I will answer one question which is flagging up there.
Please.
How will drone technology capture details of high density and dense vegetation areas? High density areas we are not touching. As of now, the pilot has been proved for village Gautans which are very low density. We are yet to prove this technology for high density urban settlements. Dense vegetation like Konkan area in Maharashtra, we are planning to use LIDAR drones. This is as far as that question is concerned.
We are close to the end of time for our session, and I know we could keep going for quite a long while. Dr. Krishnan, do you want to end with a few final words? You're muted, KP.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shah. I want to only re-emphasize a couple of points that came up both in Pranab and the other presentations. A, Gram Panchayats need, I think, some additional technical assistance besides money, and surveying capacities in the states over a period of time in many states is now woefully inadequate. So I think these are, these are good opportunities to strengthen these. And third, this is not so much an appeal to Alok as much as through Alok to the government. The scheme has 70, 80 crores. This ideally should require 5 to 10 times that kind of money. So hopefully, once the pilot is over, we should use the opportunity, because panchayats is not an area where Government of India actually gives huge money. But given that this is going to be truly, a huge multiplier in terms of benefits, we need to hugely increase the allocation for a project like this. I'm sure Mr. Chockalingam and Alok will bring all that they have on the Ministry of Finance. But for what it is worth, if we all can add our voice to it, I think it will be very, very good to see this program expand. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Krishnan. With that, I want to end, but I want to also mention that we are in a situation where, in order to generate the multiplier you just talked about, I think this will be money that will be extremely well spent. There's an institutional capacity building. There is a private property monetization possibility that is sort of once in a generation possibility that has never happened before. And of course, with the great desire to create a rural recovery, this money will be extremely well spent. I also want to end by saying that it will be very important for us to do an evaluation of this program. I think an evaluation will give us the evidence and the confidence to be able to do that. With this, let me thank all four of you, Alok, Dr. Krishnan, Mr. Chockalingam, and Pranav. Let me hand it back to Shamoli. Shamoli?
Thank you.